Good evening. I'm Bill Haggerty. It's great to be with you today. I appreciate your taking time with me tonight. And before we start, I thought I might take just a minute to say a few words about the unrest that we're experiencing right now. I think we all saw the terrible tragedy on camera with respect to Mr. George Floyd. What we saw was appalling, and I think what we saw was America come together in unity in our desire to see justice swiftly. Now 4 officers have been charged. I also respect the First Amendment right of people to express their opinions and to protest peacefully. But what we've seen is something far beyond that. There's no First Amendment right to lawlessness. There's no First Amendment right to rioting and looting and injuring people with the violence that we've seen night after night in these cities. I think the time has come, it came immediately, to stand up and address this. We need to see this violence end tonight. We need to restore law and order in America. We certainly need that to happen in Tennessee. I know there are going to be marches again this evening. There are protests that are going on at least in Memphis, Nashville, Franklin, I've heard perhaps other places. I pray that these are peaceably taken care of, that everybody abides by the rules, and that we get to a much better place in America than we are today. This is hurting the small businesses that so desperately need to revive. They've been hurt already by the pandemic, and this is not the way to approach this problem and this issue. I think there's a lot of listening that's taking place. There will be more of that, but the violence, the looting, and the mayhem needs to come to an end. It's just so unfortunate that a situation like this would be hijacked by groups of criminals and other groups that just want to see unrest in America. It's a great tragedy for the legacy of Mr. Floyd, and it's certainly a tragedy for America. So I hope that our leaders will step up and make a difference all across this nation. We've got a lot of work to do here to get America restarted, and there's no place for what we're seeing right now. Again, I want to thank you tonight for having me. My name is Bill Haggerty. I'm a Christian, a conservative, a businessman. I'm a proud pro-life father of 4. I just received the endorsement of the Susan B. Anthony list, one of the foremost leaders in the fight for life. I'm running with the complete and total endorsement of President Donald Trump. And I'm running with him to help him get this economy restarted again. He knows that I have the capability to do that because of my deep business background and our work experience together. That's why he's put me on the Economic Recovery Task Force at the White House. I've been working closely with the president and the staff there to help get our economy restarted again. He's put me back to work so I can help get America back to work and get Tennessee back to work. I'm a 4th-generation Tennessean. I'm from Middle Tennessee, Sumner County. From Gallatin. We had a small farm in a place called Castellan Springs. I grew up raising cattle and pigs and baling hay as a kid. My mother was a school teacher for her whole career. My father worked road construction. When I was older, I worked road construction alongside my dad to help pay for school. But my parents raised us with very similar values to, I think, most Tennesseans. We didn't have a lot, but they raised us with strong Christian conservative values. They taught us to love Christ. They taught us to love our country, and they taught us to love one another. And importantly, they taught us the value of hard work. I can't tell you how many nights I remember my mom being up working late with one of her students, and I tucking my younger sister into bed, or the weekends that my father would be gone working on a road job somewhere. We all learned to pull together and make ends meet, and it was a very strong and I think very positive upbringing. My father was a great dad to me. He didn't have the opportunity to graduate from college himself, but he worked very hard so that I had that opportunity. And I was very fortunate to have that chance to go to college. That helped me build a strong foundation, a foundation that allowed me to have a very successful career in business. But I must tell you, the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me was the day God smiled on me and introduced me to my wife, Chrissy. She has been the absolute best thing for me, and the two of us prayed for a large family, and God's blessed us with 4 wonderful children. We have 2 boys, William and Stephen. They both just finished the 10th grade and the 9th grade. Both of the boys are Eagle Scouts. Like me, they're trustworthy, they're loyal, and they're brave. That's what we've taught them, and that's what I learned. And that's the code that we live by. My daughters, Tara and Christine, just finished the 7th grade and the 5th grade, and they are certainly the apples of our eye. And it's because of those kids. It's because we want them to have the same freedoms and the same opportunities that we had, that Chrissy and I have decided to enter this race. And that's also the reason that President Trump has endorsed me, because he wants someone that has that sort of strength. He needs somebody who will be his ally in the U.S. Senate to get our economy restarted and to stand up with him against this radical call towards socialism that we're seeing coming from the Democrats. He also endorsed me because he knows that I'll stand strong with him to get our immigration system fixed, to build the wall. I'll stand for putting constitutionalist judges on the bench. I'll stand for life. I'll stand for the Second Amendment, and I'll stand up for our military and our veterans who so desperately need our help right now. I'll stand up against radical Islamic terrorism and call it what it is. And I will stand up against China. I've had that experience with the president. I've had that experience on behalf of America. We desperately need that voice in the United States Senate. I look forward to having the opportunity to get to know you all better and when we have a chance to get to meet in person. But again, I appreciate the chance as we've moved our campaign into a very new and different mode. For the past several months, since this shutdown began, I've had my campaign team focused on volunteering and helping across the state. They've been doing supermarket runs and pharmacy runs for people that are shut in. We've been looking for ways to be helpful all across the state, even after the tornadoes, particularly the aftermath of the tornadoes in Chattanooga that took place, and certainly those that hit Middle Tennessee from Mount Juliet all the way over to Crossville. We've also been focused on the economy. I've been spending my time working on the Economic Development Task Force and doing that in a way that I think has been quite constructive in terms of giving input to the president that will help us get this economy open sooner. I was deeply involved in the formation of the phased reopening process that the president introduced, and I'm very pleased that Governor Lee was one of the very first governors to step up and begin to open Tennessee. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. We need to see our economy rebound as quickly as possible. It's been quite frustrating to watch the process unfold in Washington, and I think quite unfortunate that we don't have more business voices there who understand how the economy works. When I saw Nancy Pelosi fly in on her plane on a Sunday and hold up the CARES Act, the Economic Recovery Act for the small businesses, medium-sized businesses in America, she held it up for 5 days so they could push for changes in the election law and a number of socialist wish list items. They got the Kennedy Center funded. What did that have to do with getting our economy restarted again? We need to see America working, and we need to get through this as quickly as possible. It's been a great privilege to work with the president again. He's put me back to work so I can help get Americans and get Tennesseans back to work, but I'm optimistic that we'll be able to do that. But the campaign certainly is quite different than it has been, but over the months that I've been campaigning, it's been a great opportunity for me to meet Tennesseans. My uncle was the president of the Southern Baptist Convention, and he always taught me to live my life by the scripture and to keep God in my heart. And the past months that I've been campaigning, I've met so many Tennesseans, and it reminds me of the Proverbs. With humility comes wisdom. So I'm here tonight to humbly ask you for your support and for your vote to be your next United States Senator. I hope you'll join President Trump and support me to be the next senator from Tennessee. And I look forward to answering some of your questions tonight. The group has been kind enough to submit some questions, and I'm going to just read the questions and then do my best to answer them now. Again, this is an unusual format, but I will start out. This is the first question. The pandemic has hurt small businesses across Tennessee. As a member of the President's Economic Task Force to reopen the country, do you believe Tennessee's economy will bounce back? Well, on the task force, we are doing everything we can to accelerate that bounce back. I'll say this, we are so fortunate that we had President Trump in office for 3 years before this all hit. I cannot imagine how we would have fared had we been in a Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton sort of economy. President Trump came in and immediately went through a regulatory review. He cut back harmful regulations and made America a much better place to do business. Again, in 2017, his first year in office, a major tax reform took place, and he took our corporate tax rate down from the highest in the world at 35% to a more competitive level at 21%. I'd like to see that competitive level go even further lower to make America even more competitive. I'd also like to see changes in our corporate tax code that will make it more attractive to invest capital in America. We can do that. We're focused on it right now. To the extent we can't get some of these things done by executive order, it will go right to the top of my legislative priority list. But there are a number of things that we can do to make America even more attractive to do business, and I think America can rebound faster and quicker as a result of that. The the economy of Tennessee, I think, is well positioned to do even better. If you look across the United States, you'll see a wide range of policies implemented at the state level. We're so fortunate to be from Tennessee. You know, back in 2011, January of 2011, I left my role in the private sector and came in to serve Tennessee. I served as our Commissioner of Economic and Community Development at that time. And in January of 2011, you remember we were coming out of the recession. We came out far too slowly under Obama's leadership. But when we arrived in office, that was January of 2011, Tennessee's unemployment rate was above the national average. Our state was doing worse than most other states. At the same time, we had a massive deficit, over $1 billion deficit. That deficit had to be rectified. It's not, states don't run like the federal government. We can't print money. So we had to fix the deficit, and the governor asked everybody running a department or an agency to review them from top to bottom to find ways to be more efficient and to save money. Because of my business background, I went first. It took 30 days with a small team, but we went through that department top to bottom. And on day 45, we implemented a new strategy. We eliminated over 40% of the positions in the department. It's not that the staff were doing anything wrong, I don't mean that, but we needed to find a new and more efficient way to do it. That's how business people approach things. We eliminated over 40% of the positions. We saved millions of dollars for Tennessee taxpayers on a recurring basis, and then I reorganized the department. And I took a team that were all sitting in Nashville in one tower and put them into 9 different locations across the state. I needed the team in the field to work with the businesses and the local leaders that we need to be so close to get the economy growing again. That's what we did. And then we got started. The previous administration had spent 130% of my budget. I had no money in my budget, but we retooled that approach as well. We really put a hard return on investment perspective into place, and we began recruiting. And we pushed Tennessee's values and we pushed Tennessee's benefits hard. By the end of my term, I stayed from 2011 through 2014. By the end of that time, Tennessee had become the #1 state in the nation for jobs created through foreign investment. We were named the State of the Year for Economic Development 2 years in a row. That's how private sector people approach things. That's how a business person can come in and make a difference. That's how you can take a conservative perspective, save millions for taxpayers, and get a better result. Washington needs that too. I don't claim to have a silver bullet to address this 26, 27, going on $30 trillion deficit, but it's sinful to put that on the backs of our our grandchildren. We've got to do something to address it, and I think we need more business people in Washington who will take that sort of conservative fiscal perspective to bear on everything that comes across their desk. I certainly hope to have the opportunity to do that. And again, with respect to Tennessee, I just say this. I think Tennessee is positioned to come back stronger and even gain market share from other states. I think America can be positioned to gain market share from other nations. But Tennessee's got the strongest balance sheet in the nation. We have the lowest debt per capita there is. That's because we've had a strong legislature. We've run this state on a fiscally conservative basis. And we have, therefore, I think, one of the most attractive markets in the nation. We have low taxes. We have a friendly business regulatory environment. And we have a great location when you think about it. Marshall County is very well positioned. You're within, a day's drive of probably 70% of the population east of the Mississippi River. So it's a great opportunity for us to sell Tennessee even harder as we come through this. I think we'll come through it well. And I applaud Governor Lee for going early in the process to reopen our economy. That will put us ahead of the curve also. So all of that combined, I think, is going to be good news for Tennessee, and I certainly hope to have the opportunity to facilitate that growth in the days and the months to come. Next question. Tennessee has a history of being a conservative state. How would you defend our conservative values, such as the right to life, in the Senate? As I mentioned, I'm a Christian. I'm a conservative. And just today, Susan B. Anthony List has endorsed me for the U.S. Senate. Susan B. Anthony List is I think, at the forefront in the fight of the right to life. I was so honored to have their endorsement, and there is a lot to be done. We need somebody that's going to stand every day and be a voice for the voiceless, somebody that will stand up to what the Democrats are doing. And it is unbelievable to see the positions that they are putting forward. I think we need a senator that's going to vote to defund Planned Parenthood once and for all. We don't need taxpayer-funded abortions, and that's what the Democrats push for all the time. Even in Nancy Pelosi's $3 trillion wish list that she put forward, she suggested there money for Planned Parenthood. We need to stand up to it. I understand they may have gotten a PPP loan. I think that needs to be taken down too. This organization certainly doesn't deserve that type of funding from the federal government. If you look at the governor of Virginia, just on the northern border of Tennessee, Governor Northam there, even promoted infanticide. I mean, the Democrats are pushing for the right to abortion right up to the point of birth. And if there's a botched abortion, a child's born alive, they want to deny that child medical treatment. That's sinful, that's wrong, and that's something that we've got to stand up to. And you need somebody in the United States Senate with the strength and the courage to do just that. And I have that strength and courage to do it. I certainly am honored again to be endorsed by the SBA list, and I look forward to standing up for the right to life. The liberal media and Washington Democrats constantly attack our president for following through on his campaign promises. How will you support the president if you're elected to the Senate? Well, I've had a great deal of experience supporting our president. Back in 2016, I volunteered full-time just to get the president elected. Full-time for 6 months back in 2016. Been through a lot with him then, and after winning, went in to help again as a full-time volunteer to help the president put the cabinet together during the Trump transition. There I worked very closely with the president and with many of the members of the cabinet and sub-cabinet level. I've got great relationships with people in the administration that served me very well in the role that the president put me in. Because after volunteering on the campaign, after volunteering on the transition, the president asked me to go to serve as the United States ambassador to Japan. And why Japan? Well, in my business career, I'd had the opportunity to live in Japan. What a great opportunity. I remember when I got out of school, small town kid from Gallatin, getting to go to a firm that was, doing things all over the world. I remember I'd been in all of 7 states at that point. And when I went to work at this firm, they gave me a chance to do, projects and work places I'd never imagined. But I loved every minute of doing that. Actually, I left the firm at one point. My father got sick. I got a call from his doctor, I remember, and he told me my father's health was deteriorating very rapidly. So I hung up the phone, I walked down the hall, and I told my boss I'd be leaving, headed back to Gallatin. It was a tough time when I got home. My father was under a tremendous amount of stress trying to keep my younger brother and sister in school. It was a lot of work. I went to the bank and personally guaranteed the debt. It took about a year to work through all of it. We wound up having to sell the family farm. But my dad's health improved. My brother and sister got through school, and it was absolutely the right thing to do. I didn't know what would happen to me after that, but the firm I worked for called me back, and they sent me to a place I'd never been to before, didn't speak the language, never imagined going there. That was Tokyo, Japan. And sometimes you don't know God's plan for you when you're in the middle of it, and that was certainly the case for me. But that gave me the chance to move there, to learn a new country, a new culture, and a new language, and it positioned me very well to serve in the role that I was going to later be called to do by President Trump. The situation in Japan has become even more vital, even more strategic for America today. When I went over there, the North Koreans had ratcheted up the tensions dramatically. If you think about where our military posture is in the world, Japan has more men and women stationed there, more of our U.S. military stationed there than any place else in the world. We have more military assets in Japan because we're dealing with the entire Asia-Pacific region from there. Think about the neighborhood. You've got North Korea, Russia, and China right there at your doorstep. When we were there, the North Koreans launched not 1, but 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles over Japan. Later, they blew up a hydrogen bomb. You may remember that. The Japanese were tense beyond belief. If you think about it, that's the only nation in the world that's been on the receiving end of a nuclear weapon. The tensions were very high there in Japan. The school kids were even doing evacuation drills with hard hats on. That's how bad it was. Same in South Korea. A lot of tension there, and we didn't have an ambassador in South Korea for 2 years. So, working very closely with our U.S. military, I traveled with Chrissy and our 4 kids. We went over to South Korea, and we crossed the border from South Korea into North Korea with a U.S. military escort. Why did I do that? I did that to demonstrate to the people of South Korea, to the people of Japan, and to everybody in that region, including the North Koreans and the Chinese, that I had complete faith in the United States military's ability to protect me and my family, just as I had faith in our military's ability to protect that entire region. That was a powerful message to send, and only could be sent by an American. It just underscores how important our role is in the world. But I loved every minute of that job. I spent more than half of my time on national security and defense issues while I was there, most of it dealing with China. And if you look at China's aggression, they are aggressive on every front. They are pushing ahead militarily in a very aggressive manner in the South China Sea and the East China Sea. You may remember President Xi coming to the United States back in 2015. The issue was they were crushing coral reefs, pouring millions of tons of concrete into the ocean and building these stable islands that we were very concerned about. Xi promised President Obama, standing right beside him in the Rose Garden, he promised America that he had no intention of militarizing those islands. You should look what happened by the end of 2016. They had runways on those islands, turrets, fully armed. This is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. And the Chinese have now got, I think, 6 of these islands built. I mean, these are giant stationary aircraft carriers. They've increased their military budget 8-fold over the past couple of decades. They are aggressive militarily in a way that's wholly unacceptable, and we've got to stand up to them. Just a few weeks ago, they sank a Vietnamese fishing vessel. They are extremely aggressive and a real threat to the world, particularly in that region. And we've got to have a strong U.S. military to be able to deal with that. President Trump has rebuilt our military. I think as we move our focus from the Middle East and other areas, we need to really be focusing on China, and we have. The situation in North Korea, again, it remains tense, but President Trump has completely changed the dialogue there. We're not where we want to be today, but I think we're in a far better place because they understand that we're standing up. We're no longer leading from behind, and America is strong again in that region. We need to stay that way. On an economic front, I think everybody's aware as well of how aggressive China has been. They steal our intellectual property. If you want to do business in that country, they force you to transfer your technology there. And they use heavy subsidies of their chosen industries to compete unfairly against American companies and other companies all over the world. We can't stand for that any longer. This has gone on far too long, and this is a bipartisan problem. Both Republican and Democrat administrations have looked the other way for too long. And finally, President Trump has stood up to the Chinese. But I think the rest of the world is waking up. This Wuhan virus that's come through and their efforts to cover it up have created something horrible for the entire world. They definitely tried to cover up that disease, regardless of where the source was. The Chinese, no question, came in, destroyed samples, they silenced doctors, they kicked Western journalists out of their country. They forbade travel from Wuhan into other parts of China. You couldn't fly from Wuhan to Beijing, but they allowed people to fly from Wuhan to other countries, spreading this virus and this pandemic all over the world. The World Health Organization comes in and even supports them. Again, that reveals China's diplomatic aggression as well. They've been very aggressive in diplomatic entities like the United Nations and this World Health Organization. One of my friends calls it the CHO, the China Health Organization, because of the depth of their influence. And if you saw what this director Tedros did as he came in and defended China and even criticized us for cutting off travel from China early, it's wholly unacceptable. They've got to reform and change their ways. And so there you've got China's aggression on both the military front, the economic front, and the diplomatic front. And I'm so pleased that President Trump has stepped up to defund the WHO and hold them accountable. We've got to continue to hold China accountable economically, and we need to look at other ways to make China accountable for what they've done to us and to the rest of the world, both from a physical health standpoint, death and sickness all over the world because of this coronavirus, and also for the economic damage that they've created. They should not be allowed to list on our exchanges. We've got to sanction them where necessary. I've been very involved with President Trump in doing just that, blocking a company called Huawei out of our telecommunications infrastructure. The president stepped up and did that here in America. I worked very closely with him and with the government of Japan to get them to do the same thing, so the Japanese telecommunications system is now free and clear of that. We need our allies to be safe and secure, not to have Chinese-built architecture moving forward. And as we move into the new environment, the 5G telecommunications environment, we need to make certain that it's secure, and I think it's far too much risk to have Chinese equipment in that infrastructure. Thank you very much for that question. The riots and the looting we saw this past weekend in Nashville and around the country were appalling. What more can be done to protect law-abiding citizens. I mentioned this at the outset. It certainly is appalling what's happening. I think we are all sad and share the desire to see justice done for Mr. George Floyd, but there's no way to do justice to him, to have a legacy like this. We need to see this behavior, this illegal, unlawful behavior, come to an end immediately. The president has mentioned that he would go as far as bringing in the United States military. I support doing that. It's called the Insurrection Act, if we get to that point. But if the mayors and the governors of these cities and states can't step up and protect and defend their citizens, the president has promised that he will step up and finish the job for them. I think that he needs to do that, and he's capable of doing that, and I support that. It's really a sad day when you see groups like Antifa, when you see just criminals coming in and hijacking these protests and turning them into an opportunity to create mayhem across the nation. This hurts us not only in America, but it hurts us overseas. It feeds the Chinese in a way. I'm sure they're spreading this propaganda all over their nation, trying to compare what's happening here to what happened there in Tiananmen Square, or to what's happening right now as they crush the democracy in Hong Kong. You know, I stand with the people in Hong Kong and their democracy. China, again, has violated their promise to sustain and retain that democracy. They've implemented their national security law on Hong Kong, but that in no way is similar to what's happening here in America. What we're seeing here in America is a disastrous advancement of lawlessness, and it's very, very disturbing to see some of these mayors and governors just allow this to happen. In no way does this serve America's interest. I hate to see it become politicized. It should not. It should come to an end. And I'm very supportive of making it come to an end as quickly as possible and defending Americans, defending Tennesseans, as I think that's our job as leaders to do. So thank you very much for that question. And we have time, I guess, for one more question. Oh, this is great. If elected to the Senate, how will you help rural Tennessee? You know, we've got a lot of challenges in our rural areas. That's very true here in Tennessee. Fortunately, I grew up in a rural area, and you know, I know, not only do I know my way around the trade negotiation table, I negotiated the trade agreement between Japan, or worked on the team that negotiated the trade agreement between Japan and the United States, but I've worked in a barn too. I've got that sort of perspective. But I think the first point is we need to get our economy growing again. As I mentioned, I worked hard to get Tennessee's economy growing when I served as the Director of Economic and Community Development, but we have a lot more ground to cover. I applaud the direction that Governor Lee is taking us in terms of getting more and better occupational training. We've got great community colleges. The Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology can really help make our rural workforce into a competitive advantage for Tennessee, make us more competitive than other nations, and improve everyone's livelihood. I think that's going to be absolutely critical to continue to pursue that. I also want to see broadband access across rural Tennessee. I think we've come to appreciate that more than ever as the economy is shut down, as people have been left at home. We need to have good connectivity. And as we move into the next generation, we need to make sure that the infrastructure is safe and clean. There's law in place right now that's going through the Senate right now that would actually rip out the Chinese equipment, would cover the cost of ripping out Chinese equipment from the architecture that's there, and make sure that as we move forward, we have broad access across the nation and secure access. So I think that is critically important. Another thing is rural hospitals. I've had the benefit of visiting a number of rural hospitals here in Tennessee. They are under a tremendous amount of stress. We've lost a number of rural hospitals. And when I hear the Democrats calling for Medicare for all, that would be the death knell of our rural hospitals. Today, those rural hospitals depend a great deal on having private pay insurance. And they have a high number of people that come that don't pay at all, don't have the ability to pay at all. If we take away private pay insurance and knock everything down to the levels of Medicare, these hospitals have all assured me that they will go out of business. So our rural hospitals, I think, are in danger. I've been working with some local mayors here in Tennessee to address this problem. I'm very pleased that we've had one reopen in the Upper Cumberland just recently. I've worked with another mayor to try to get a new standalone emergency center in place. So I think we're going to see progress on that front, but it's something that's going to require a lot of attention, a lot of resources, and something that we desperately need to take care of here in Tennessee. The final thing that I'm very concerned about in rural areas is the opioid crisis. It's hit our rural areas more than any other place. One of the things that's got to be done, the president has talked about this for a long time, is that we have to secure our southern borders. If you talk to law enforcement, you talk to your sheriff, they'll tell you this is a real problem. When I was serving as ambassador to Japan, when I arrived there, I had a drug enforcement agency unit in my embassy. I said, why is this? Why would we need a U.S. drug enforcement agency unit there? Well, that's to interdict fentanyl coming from China on its way to Mexico, where it will be mixed in Mexico and sent across our porous borders. We've got to secure our borders. We've got to, again, ensure law and order here. And we've got to find a way to treat and help those people that have been trapped in this terrible opioid crisis. If we can get our economy going again, we can improve the economic opportunities. I think that's going to make a big difference as well. And our religious freedom has to come back strong too. I think we've all been deprived of going to church. Religious freedom in churches are an essential organization for America and certainly for Tennessee. And I think as we come back, our faith, I believe, will be stronger. I think it will be a great opportunity for us to help those in need. And again, another way to address the opioid crisis is by sharing our faith with those that are distraught and in trouble and in this situation so that they can recover. I certainly appreciate your taking the time with me tonight and allowing me to introduce myself to you. And again, I look forward to the opportunity to meet you in person soon. But in the meantime, again, I want to ask your support and ask for your vote and ask you to join President Trump in endorsing and supporting me to be your next United States Senator for Tennessee. Thank you so much.